Hi guys, welcome back to The Contented Plant. Today we are going to talk all about the Philodendron Golden Goddess. I am going to repot mine and do a little bit of care on it. She's a little bit sad and we will get into that in the video. Okay, so a little bit of backstory about this plant. My mom picked it up at a nursery for me a couple months ago. I asked her to take a look because she was going into the nursery to see if they had any neon philodendrons, and this one was mislabeled as a neon philodendron. Although it has neon leaves, it was not the neon that I was talking about. The one I was talking about grows a lot like the pothos back there. It has heart-shaped leaves. I can insert a picture so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I was happy to be surprised with the Philodendron Golden Goddess because I did not have one yet. So I've just kind of not had a lot of time to care for this plant and figure out what it needs yet. It's kind of sat off in a corner. It had a massive spider mite infestation that I had to deal with when I first got it. So it has been quarantined. It sat over on a chair by itself for a while and it's just been through it. So we're going to pay attention to this plant today, do a little bit of care for it, and we will talk about how to grow a beautiful Philodendron Golden Goddess. Okay, so one of the first things that I want to talk about and mention, you can see that this new growth here, let me see if I can bring this one down. It does not look good. It's very damaged. It has holes all over it. It has browning everywhere. This poor plant has been beat up. First of all, I think it got beat up at the nursery pretty bad, and then it got beat up by the spider mites. So it's really been through it. I don't love the potting mix that the nursery had it in, so I'm going to be repotting it into more of an aeroid mix. I'm also going to be dealing with this stake because it's in a really tiny, shallow little pot that has this wobbly little stake and it just keeps falling over, which really isn't helping it grow at all. So I'm going to repot it and see where we go from there. So this plant is native to Central South America. It's like many of the philodendrons in the philodendron family. It is very used to having really high humidity, pretty warm tropical temperatures. So if you have it indoors, you're definitely going to want to keep your humidity a little higher when you have this plant. It's a lot like the other tropical aeroids. Okay, so this is what we have here. It's a very wet glob of soil. So I'm going to gently massage this off the roots and see what our root structure looks like. The reason I don't love this soil mixture is I haven't watered this for quite a while. And this soil is so wet. It just hangs onto it. It does not drain. The aeroid mixture that I like to put it in is pretty well draining, and I don't usually have these problems with an aeroid mixture. Yucky. But you can just see it's like just pure mud. It's just so muddy and so wet. There's actually water like dripping off of those roots. That's nuts. Okay, so here's what we're working with. This plant does not have a very large root structure at all. In fact, it's quite tiny for the size of the plant. So I don't really think it's been very happy in the soil mixture that it's been in. So you can actually hear and see that this soil is so wet. It's very heavy, and it's almost just like pure gloppy mud. All right, so what we're gonna do is repot this poor baby into a pot that has lots of holes in it. I like this one because it promotes airflow and it kind of helps that soil dry out a little bit and it won't hold moisture like the other pot that it was in. And we're gonna see how it does in a really well-draining aeroid mix. For now, I'm probably gonna put it back on this stake. I'm just going to plant it a little deeper. You can see it was only planted to here, so that's why it was so floppy. I'm gonna put this right down in there and stake the philodendron up and see how it goes from there. Okay, so my aeroid mix is pretty straightforward and simple. It's worked really great for me so far, so I kind of just stick with this. I have about 50% potting soil. I would say 20 to 30% orchid bark, and then the rest I just add a little bit of extra perlite in there. I just mix it all together so it's a nice chunky mix for the plant. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to plant the stake down in there with my soil so that I'm not hurting the roots by driving that stake down once I have the plant already in there. So I just kind of pop it along the back there, and I'm just going to fill this in with my potting mixture. Okay, so as you can see, it kind of has this backside here where it has a bare spot that I'm going to put right on that bamboo stick. I just use a little piece of plant Velcro there to hold it in place. Okay, so she is all settled into her new pot. I have the stake going from the bottom of the pot all the way up, and it is much, much more secure. So I'm happy with that. I think this plant's gonna do a lot better in a chunky aeroid mix than it did in that super heavy, I think it was mostly soil because it was just basically mud. So my top care tips for this plant would be you can either grow it on a moss pole or you can grow it as a trailing plant. I'm going to transfer mine to a moss pole in the springtime when the growing season hits again. I think it will do great if it's allowed to climb a little bit. Keep it in bright indirect to medium light. I have mine kind of in a medium light area and it's been doing great so far. Even during the winter, it's been putting up new leaves every couple weeks or so. So I think it's pretty happy in that spot despite its condition at the moment. Make sure you have the appropriate soil mixture. As we just found out, sometimes the nurseries plant them in a very heavy soil mix, which is just not good for aeroids, and it can suffocate, drown those roots, and rot them really fast. So if you suspect that yours has a really heavy soil mixture, I would suggest switching it out to a very chunky soil or a light aeroid mix. Make sure that you are always potting this plant in a pot with a drainage hole. Again, you do not want water just sitting at the bottom of the pot, collecting and suffocating those roots. Water this plant every 1 to 2 weeks. You can do the finger test and you can put your finger down in there and see if the top 2 inches of soil are very dry. Go ahead and do a really thorough watering. I suggest bottom watering with a plant like this. That's just where you take a bowl, fill it up with water, and you plop the plant in, and it will just absorb the water up through the drainage hole, and the plant will take as much as it needs. I usually let it sit in the bowl for 10 to 15 minutes. That's a really foolproof way of watering where you're going to avoid oversaturating the plant. This plant is easy to propagate. You can just cut it right in between the internodal spacing there. It has really easy to see nodes, and it also has little growth points all over it, and it does root fairly easily. You can either propagate it in water or damp sphagnum moss. In the summertime, you can probably propagate it in moist soil as long as you keep it in an area that is really bright so it continues to grow through its propagation cycle. Okay, that's all I have on the Philodendron Golden Goddess. I hope that helped you guys out. I'm hoping mine will turn the corner and become a happier Philodendron Golden Goddess now that we have the soil problem and the spider mites resolved. So I'm going to add her back into the plant collection and see how she does. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, you can like and subscribe. You can follow me on Instagram at The Contented Plant or TikTok at The Contented Plant. We will see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.